Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1340 of our daily content grind, and today is another request via Patreon. We have done speculation videos a lot for upcoming Haslab figures, and I know Haslab's in an interesting state right now. Haslab's in an interesting place at the moment. But let's just assume Lyle Kaiser ends up fine and everything's going to be okay Haslab-wise from here on out, because it is still a very enticing way of getting a Transformer that otherwise would not be possible at retail for numerous odd reasons. And we're not going to get into those debates today. You know, we aren't going to start fighting over what should and should not be, released at retail. But today we are going to decide what is best for retail, what is for Haslab. In what I believe is going to be the best fits for whichever one happens to be on this list, not so much as, the reasoning behind it, like, oh, well, they could have done that at Commander. Well, no, not really. So we're going to go through the whole list. And this list is actually comprised of toys that not only I have mentioned in the past, but ones that you have mentioned. I went through comment sections of some of my old videos to pull this list to get some of the most popular picks for Haslab that have not been done yet. Now, let's start this off with getting this one out of the way. Primus is not going to happen at all. They are not going to do Primus. The character isn't nearly as well known as Unicron, and Unicron barely got funded. And if they did it now, it would be way more expensive than Unicron was, meaning this is 100% unviable. So we aren't going to worry about Primus. Just to throw it in there, obviously there's no way this would work as a Titan. This would have to be Commander class, or this had to be a Titan. This would have to be Haslab, but it would never happen. But Haslab is where it would have to go. Let's get into the meatier ones, the ones we can actually discuss, like Ginrai, for instance. Now he does have a retail release in the Generations line, but it is a retool of a previous figure. It doesn't really push the limit. Like, I feel like it is a very lacking release, and of course it was riddled with QC issues. So this is one where I think a lot of us would absolutely love to have it redone at the retail level. I believe you could probably get away with this today at the small Titan class. I don't think Ginrai is one that you do as a Haslab, though Haslab does provide some enticing little bonuses. You could throw the Headmaster Juniors in there as a stretch goal. There's a few others that you can throw about in that, but ultimately I feel like this one would work as a smaller Titan. And after some backlash over, oh, why did you do RID Optimus as a Haslab? He could have been a retail figure. I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on that again. Not to mention Ginrai, a lot easier of a figure to engineer out than Ultra Magnus. So yeah, this would work as a smaller Titan. That's what I would bet Ginrai would be, not Haslab. Let's get into some Japanese G1. We have a couple of sections of Japanese G1 to go through. We'll start with the miscellaneous section, which we're technically in now. But the other reason you do it at retail is this is also Power Master Optimus Prime. The only reason you don't do it as a Haslab is because they did the Masterpiece God Ginrai, which is basically what you'd get out of a Haslab. So like a simplified, more imagination-filled version that's easier to afford, that's the direction to go. Point being, let's move on to Grandus, something I brought up a lot. Now, the character is super obscure, and let's be honest, the vehicle mode is not very interesting. Even if they modernized it, it would still be a super weird, not very interesting vehicle mode. I would put this definitely as a Haslab release if you also include Sky Gary, and you do this as kind of a supplement to the Titan Star Convoy. And then your stretch goals for this would actually be fairly doable. Like, they would be more of the trailers, so that Sky Gary would hopefully still have his gimmick to hold a ton of them in jet mode. You could throw in just, every stretch goal is a new set of Micromasters to play around on the base modes. Your stretch goals could include the ramps and connection pieces to bring all their base modes together. That would be super cool. You could, yeah, there's absolutely room to do that here. So yeah, this is a Haslab release. Like, there's no way you're ever going to get a retail level Grandus, even at no matter what the size class is, just because of the obscurity of the character and the limited appeal it's going to have. So Haslab as it is. You go to Haslab. How about Dai Atlas? He's kind of in the same vein as Power Master Optimus / Ginrai in that he does have a Generations figure, but because it's a heavy retool of another toy, it doesn't feel like a satisfying take on the character. And I would say the same for his entire team. So this is, again, something that you could technically do as a smaller Titan or do his entire team as a larger Titan, but I feel like this would be a Haslab style release. I think he works better there. You could include all three of them as a Haslab. You could start throwing in extras. You could like the big Z-wing sword thing that he had. You can make that like a dedicated accessory piece that comes with it as a stretch goal. You could include the Zodiac as a stretch goal, since we actually do know what that looks like and we can actually throw that in. Yeah, so there's a few options there. Not great options for stretch goals, but it can be done. You unlock off one of the three behind a stretch goal, by the way. Haslab's not going to throw, let's be honest, Deathsaurus set a precedent for getting a full deluxe figure as a stretch goal, but that's a character was likely already in consideration. He was likely already incorporated into the budget. They knew they would hit that, so they went ahead and threw him in. I'm going to presume for all of these that a completely new figure, unless it's something simple. If it's small and simple, I would throw, it could be a stretch goal, but like a full deluxe or Voyager added on, no. So it'd be the trio. It'd be the entire trio for big powered, but it would, yeah. And then this Dai Atlas at the start, Dai Atlas at the forefront of it. Raiden is a weird one. There is a lot to do with this toy, but at the same time, you have the Masterpiece toy that was already trying to do high-end Raiden, but also generation scaled, because that just happened to be how large they ended up, because the vehicle modes had to appeal to train collectors. But that said, I would love this to be done in generation style, so we didn't have that aspect of it forced in. Also, let's be honest, I think Takara needs another go around on this one. You're not going to see it at retail. This is a Haslab choice. This is absolutely a Haslab release. And I feel like Takara needs another attempt at this just to please everybody and to give us one that better matches in with all the generations combiners, especially the new ones that are coming out. So yeah, absolutely Haslab. You could make the stretch goals something as simple as just train tracks for each of the members, and the tracks combine into the display stand for Raiden. That's easy enough to do. Like, yeah, there's options there. Now, if we want to talk trains, yeah, Rail Racer's another popular pick. And I think RID picks after Optimus Prime are starting to become a lot more prevalent and popular. So this one, honestly, what limits him is I literally have no idea what you do with stretch goals. Like, Raiden has a few options outside of just train tracks, but I genuinely don't know what you do with Rail Racer. He's a bullet train, so like even traditional train tracks aren't the best accessory for him. Now, this one, honestly, one of the things that stops them from releasing something like Lio Kaiser at mass retail is the fact there are so many parts and processes to that toy because he is so colorful. He has a lot of different molds that have to go on at the same time, so everything can be different colors. That's what limits things like Predaking. Predaking gets to be at, as a one Titan release, Devastator as well, because they all have these matching colors to them. They can all be run on the mold at the same time. You've seen where they do like the Legacy multi-pack for Megasaur, and it ends up being a lot more expensive than what those two combiners ended up being. That's because of all the extra part process for the different colors. Rail Racer doesn't have that problem. A lot of his colors, a lot of his pieces can be gang molded together because they share the same colors, the gray, the blue, the white. This could be done at mass retail. This is a Titan. This is a small scale Titan, and I think it's a perfect release to do. I think it's an absolutely perfect option for a small scale Titan. Yeah, it's not as interesting. Like the bullet train aspect is not as appealing in America, but at Titan scale, you're really not selling to very many kids, are you? And if you market it as the giant robot looks awesome. So I think that's the way to go. What to do with Megatron? I've seen people suggest he should be a Haslab because of his engineering being so complex. And I will admit it is a lot. You know, when you think about it, 6 modes and or 10, that is a ton. I honestly though, he does not need to be a Haslab. He really does not. He is complex, but he is complex because they have worked his natural articulation points into the transformation of the 10 modes. Meaning his dedicated transformation engineering really isn't all that much. You know, it's mostly just convenient and clever ways of working his natural articulation. In that, and not to mention, scale is a thing here. He shouldn't be as big as Omega Prime. There is a lack of things you could do for like stretch goals. Also, I don't think you want to cut off the possibility of getting the Galvatron colors because he is one of the prettiest repaints of all time. This is, I wouldn't even say a Titan. See, the whole idea behind this video is that small scale Titan has changed a lot. And that could mean that we get a lot of extra characters at retail that we wouldn't have gotten before. And things like this start coming up in conversation. If I'm being frank with you here, he's a commander class. He doesn't need to be huge. He does not need to be, you know, towering over anyone. But if you look at something like 86 Ultra Magnus, yeah, that size. He should be that size. You know, that gives you plenty of room for engineering. That gives you a nice sustainable mode that's closer to the scale that the character is supposed to have. Yeah, you do have a possibility here, and I would love to see it, but it's got to be Commander so we can get a repaint out of it. All right, G1 Wave 2, and this time we will stick to the victory list because obviously with me talking, everyone suggests victory characters to me. Road Caesar, I'm going to tell you right now, is always going to be complicated because Blacker making 2/3 of the giant robot mode is going to be very tricky no matter how you do it. I do think there's an appeal to this that might work at retail, but honestly, I think this would have to be a Haslab for the engineering behind it. And just like, how would you actually make that work when all 3 members have to be the same size in robot mode? And also remember, they're brain masters. You could get this at retail if all 3 were just, you know, more simplified characters all in one box. You would not get this at retail with brain masters. If you want them to function and be exactly who the original toys were, this has to be a Haslab. I genuinely don't know if people would be into this character enough for a Haslab, but it's the only way this toy would actually get done the way it needs to get done. I have no idea what you do on stretch goals. That's a little bit lost on me, but that's your option. I'll just tell you right now, like literally, that's the only way I can imagine it being done. And we know Hasbro and Takara both say they want to do it, but I think that's about the only way it's going to happen. What about Landcross? This one is very difficult because the original toys work because they were simple. So I almost think Haslab might be a waste on these guys, but at the same time, I'm not sure if you could get a viable set out of them at retail level. This is also going into the fact that this character is incredibly obscure. The demand for this character is very, very low. That would indicate a Haslab release. And if you're talking about the engineering behind it too, yeah, I would say this is something you need to do at Haslab. This is a Haslab size toy. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how you'd make it work, but I feel like that's the only way to make it work. There are some that people ask for Haslab where I think like, we don't have to remake literally every character, right? It's okay to leave a toy in the past and not have to redo every single thing from the original G1 line. And I kind of feel like this is one of them because the simplicity is what makes this work. But people are going to want over detailed. They're going to want articulated. They're going to want, more cartoon accurate. That's going to be extremely difficult. Haslab's the only option you might have. Retail, this would never, ever happen. Even as individual releases. Maybe as individual releases. Maybe not a box set. Maybe not a box set, but just some like really clever deluxes, or more likely small-ish Voyagers. But then again, you're facing the part of no one outside of hardcore fans know who this is. Like, how are you going to sell Dash Tacker at retail and expect kids to buy it? It's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. Here's one with a little bit of an easier answer. Why did you go back? Because I hit the wrong key. That was very anticlimactic. Dino King. Now, we did just get a Dino King, but it's a retool of the Dinobot, so it's not really the correct version of the character, is it? We need to fix that. So how do you do it? This one I definitely think is Haslab. You could do it at retail, but I don't think retail level budget would give you the thing that's really important here, which is how do you work in the shells? This is what you do. Dino King is your Haslab. It's all generation scaled, so all of them are going to be deluxe classes when they're broken down, and then you work in whatever junk you have to in order to make that happen. And when it comes to the Haslab itself, there is only one stretch goal. You have the initial 10,000 to get the toy funded, and then you have that tier 3, 18,000. You make that the only stretch goal, because at that level, we get the shells. We get all 6 shells. And that's all you need. Because if you do like every goal gets you 2 shells, you would not get what you want out of it. You genuinely would not. It would be so disappointing if like only 2 got funded and like there's only 4 out of the 6 shells. Yeah. But the shells are very, very important to the actual identity of these characters because they spent so much time in those shells and emoting as characters in those shells. You absolutely need to include them. So yeah, that would be my plan. He's a Haslab, but he is a Haslab with only one stretch goal to make sure that all those shells can be afforded. That's your goal. All right. Miscellaneous time now. This is getting toward the end of the video, so let's go a little bit faster here. Magnaboss is absolutely a retail titan. I think enough fans know him. His look is cool enough. As a small scale titan, I think he would be the perfect size class to work into your Beast Wars toys. And there'd be just a little bit of engineering budget left over so that we can make Prowl's head flip around like Beast Wars mutant head style to reveal the more convoy-esque head. And we can make it animation accurate. We can make it blue, so it can be Lio Jr. if you want. So, if you want Ironhide, Silverbolt, and Prowl, that's fine. Flip that head around, and all of a sudden, you've got Santon, Skywarp, and Lio Jr., which I think is my preferred method at this point. I have floated this many times of Energon Optimus Prime, and this falls into the same RID Optimus debate of, I don't think this would work because you would want the secondary toy that makes it really, really good. RID Optimus Prime is really good on his own, but you want Ultra Magnus, you want Omega Prime. That toy would not really go well. That toy would not sell at retail. It just would not. You could not release him on his own and get enough people interested in just him to justify it. And I feel the same is true for Wing Saber. I don't think fans would want this particular Optimus Prime if Wing Saber was not part of the equation. So the only way that's going to happen, because no way Wing Saber is selling at retail price, the only way that's happening is Haslab. The only way everything you want out of this set happens is at Haslab level. There are stretch goals for him too. The Energon Blaster, for instance, comes to mind. But beyond that, yeah, I want this as a Haslab. Especially because I think Energon is just that, like, middle child that no one really likes. Armada, we got away with the Commander. Cybertron Optimus, everyone is asking for. Hasbro and Takara both want to do it. This one slips by the wayside. So I think you need the Haslab to make it work. Animated Omega Supreme is one of those where I feel like this is inevitably going to be a retail release and probably at the previous Titan scale and price point. Maybe more expensive than Titans used to be because, inflation sucks. But this is one of those where, one, I don't see stretch goals possible on him, and two, you're going to want Lugnut Supreme as an option. You're just going to want to. So you can't Haslab him and cut off that possibility because it's too well known from the finale of that show. So that's absolutely that absolutely has to be done. Omega, if he comes out, is going to be like a giant size Titan. I think we need more animated characters to come out first, which looks like Hasbro, according to Leak List, is going to be working on. Super Megatron comes up now. And Super Megatron has a heavily remolded toy, but I definitely think in lieu of Star Convoy coming out as a small scale Titan, we definitely need a proper dedicated mold Super Megatron. And that said, he's probably Commander class. Here's the thing. If you want Super Megatron, he's Commander class. You just make a dedicated toy for that particular version of the character. If you want Ultra Megatron, then he's a Haslab, because that would be a lot of alternate parts to make that happen, and that might not have the budget at Commander class to do that. We saw the attempt they did at a Voyager scale, and that worked okay, but that is pretty rough. Commander would definitely give them the budget to clean that up a lot, but I don't know if it would work well enough to make both of them a really accurate depiction. So this is like a toss-up one. I could see this working as I could see this working as a Haslab, but I could also see it being a Titan class. Or not even Titan. I think Titan might be too big. He's smaller than Star Convoy. So this would end up being like a Commander in my head. Thunderwing came up in the discussion, and it's interesting that Thunderwing has never really gotten a really good figure in a long, long time, considering how prominent he was in the Marvel books. He still has a lot of popularity. I really like Stormbringer version, where like you get him to be really, really big and really, really powerful. That is a possibility. I do think he would work better, probably Commander class retail. I don't think it's necessary. I think his popularity is high enough to work at Commander class. The debate here is, how do you make the Pretender stuff work? That's where this toy has always gotten hung up on, how to release a modern one. So that's the hiccup. That's what you have to figure out first. We've talked about how to do modern Pretenders before on this channel. So for this, we're a little bit iffy. We're not quite sure. I would prefer to do him as a Commander, though. And I'm going to end off on one that almost nobody mentioned, but I genuinely think it's the best idea for a Haslab project that I have seen. And I wish I could say I came up with this idea. No, it's been floated around before, but I'll tell you how it has to be done. I'll tell you how to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJD. We have gone on a long time about, well, we have the entire DJD at our fingertips. Why can't we release the others? Well, because they turn into things that would be objectionable at retail level. I don't think a parent in the toy aisle is going to appreciate seeing a toy electric chair in amongst all of the nice cars and planes that Transformers normally turn into. And then some literally don't even have like a proper vehicle mode. They just turn into torture devices. So this is something that would never work at retail, but it's a huge demand. Hasbro knows people have been asking for more DJD toys for years, based solely on how good the Tarn came out. So here's what you do. You have a set come out for Haslab that is all scaled to that Voyager class Tarn toy. So you can have a whole lineup of DJD, out of the box if you already have the Tarn. So you'd have, so that would mean a couple of leader class ones would be in there, a few deluxes. And here's what you do for your stretch goals. Remember I said small figures would probably be okay. You do nickel as the first stretch goal. As the second stretch goal, the pet. That's how this would work. And the pet doesn't even technically have to transform, but you can make it transform and be really creepy about it. So that's how you pattern that. And then number 3 can be, your usual effect parts, display stands, whatever, who cares. But the point being, this is the only way you're going to get a proper DJD. It's got to be a Haslab, and I think it's a brilliant choice. And it's where we have to leave off for the day. This is a much longer video than planned, but thank you for sticking around. If you made it to the end, I do appreciate it. And there you go. Let me know in the comments below which one you think is the best idea here. And as always, I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.